Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan abduhu wa rasuluh. Amma ba'd, fa'auzu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. وَلَقَدْ خَلَقْنَا الْإِنسَانَ مِنْ صَلْصَالٍ مِّنْ حَمَإٍ مَّسْنُونٍ وَالْجَانَّ خَلَقْنَاهُ مِنْ قَبْلُ مِنْ نَارِ السَّمُومِ وَخَلَقَ الْجَانَّ مِنْ مَارِجٍ مِّنْ نَارٍ فَبِأَيِّ آلَاءِ رَبِّكُمَا تُكَذِّبَانِ. Sadaqallahul Azim. And the translation is, and surely we created man of sounding clay, of black mud fashioned into shape, and the jinn we created before of intensely hot fire. And he created the jinn of a flame of fire, which then of the bounties of your Lord will you deny? The topic of my speech, first of all, I must say that I stand here very humble and very weak in myself, so I'm not a scholar. And the question that arises in my mind, I'm trying to present something on this question which might raise more questions than answers. But then it will encourage you all to go and read about it and then discuss among yourselves. It's the concept of jinn in Islam. So that's what I'm going to talk about. They say belief is everything. Belief really is everything. Without belief, nothing can be achieved. We'd still be living in the caves. Why? Because if we don't believe, we don't act. So we have to have a belief before we do any action. Simple as that. Think about it. If you didn't believe wherever you work, your company were going to pay you, would you go to work that morning? Or if you didn't believe that the medicine was going to do you any good, would you take it? Similarly, in religious matters, belief holds a very important place, and correct belief with the right actions leads to a virtuous life that brings about the change in humans that Allah wants and results in a harmonious and peaceful society in accordance with the laws of Allah, which are laid in the Quran for the Muslims, of course. So correct belief and actions lead to peace and harmony in this case. In any religion, belief is the foundation of the building. And if there is a problem in the foundation, the structure cannot sustain itself and will ultimately collapse. We are fortunate, we are very fortunate, to be the Jamaat of the reformer of the 14th century. And the role of the reformer is to purify the original and pristine teachings of Islam and get rid of the false concepts and doctrines which find their way into the religion. For example, people who still believe in coming back of Jesus Christ are still looking up at the heavens with pity and will never be able to benefit from the reformation of the promised Messiah. Look at what has happened with the incorrect belief of jihad, which has caused so much disrepute to Islam. And we're all very aware, I don't need to go into detail, we know what is happening in the world because of the misconception. If belief and conviction is not present, then none of the prayers, religious ceremonies, or huge mosques will be able to bring about the change that the religion demands, as it's very evident around the world. There are many issues we can discuss about belief, but today I will focus on the concept of the jinn. It is a very difficult concept to grasp, as there seems to be no clear-cut understanding surrounding the topic generally. But I will present a few ideas, especially taken from our elders, as we always do, from Maulana Muhammad Ali, from Dr Jawad Ahmad, and from what the world thinks. And then I'll leave that to your own judgment in the end, a few scientific facts put in between. Throughout history, man has a deep attraction for the supernatural and the unseen. The existence of a world parallel to our own has always fascinated people. This world is commonly referred to as the spirit world. For some people, these spirits are no more than the souls of the dead people or ghosts. For others, spirits are the forces of good or evil, both battling against one another to gain influence over the humanity. However, both these explanations are more in tune with folk tales and fantasy. The true explanation of such a word comes from Islam. Like every other way, Islam also claims to explain the realm of the unseen. The Islamic explanation of the jinn provides us with so many answers to modern day mysteries. So who or what are the jinn? Are the jinn beings created and living on earth in a world parallel to mankind? The Arabic word jinn is from the verb jannah, which means to hide or conceal. Thus, they are physically invisible from man, as their description suggests. So they are something hidden. You can't see them. The general concept about the jinn prevalent among the Muslims can be traced from the Quran and the Sunnah. And Allah Ta'ala says, "Indeed, we created man from dried clay of black, smooth mud, and we created the jinn before that from the smokeless flame of fire." Quran 15, chapter 15, verse 26-27. So the jinn were created before the man. Just remember that point, because I'm going to talk about it later on. Thus the jinn were created before man. As for their physical origin, according to a saying of the Holy Prophet from Sahih Muslim, and I quote, "The angels were created from light and the jinn from smokeless fire." Thus, in discussing jinn, it is generally said that as they were created from fire, their nature is fiery. And if somehow they are harmed, that's what people believe, if you harm the jinn, they enter into a human body and disturb the human being. And they manifest themselves in many ways. That's what the common belief in a lot of people is, and there's a lot of ills in the society. If you look around you, these fake peers who are trying to get this jinn out of you, and then somebody's had shadow of the jinn or jinn's affected you, and they're making money and disreputing Islam. If you look around, you have to put jinn on YouTube and you see the millions of videos that turn up. And it's mostly in Pakistan. I'm sure in other parts of the world it's also happening. So it is important that people understand what this jinn is being talked about. Like Quran, jinn has been spoken about in various different manners. Not just one word applies all. It's a word that is used for different things at different times. So we need to understand that. I'm sure our Jamaat understands it, our elders understand it. But for the youth and other people around us, I think it's a question that always baffles people. If we study other verses of the Quran, we get a different picture of a jinn as somewhat similar to a being. Let us go through the verses and see what the picture of jinn emerges. So chapter 6, verse 112, "And thus did we make for every prophet an enemy, the devils from among men and jinn, some of them inspiring others with gilded speech to deceive them. And the hearts of those who believe not in the hereafter may incline thereto." Then further on, Quran says in verse 128, "And on the day when he will gather them all together, O assembly of jinn, you took away a great part of people, and their friends from the people will say, Our Lord, some of us profited by others, and we have reached our appointed term, which you appointed for us. Allah will say, the fire is your abode." So when they're talking about gathering together, it's in mention of jinn and people together. So they're not something separate, as some people believe. And further on, in verse 130 of this chapter, Quran says, "O community of jinn and people, did not messengers come to you from among you, relating to you my messages, and warning of the meeting of this day of yours? They will say, we bear witness against ourselves." So Maulana Muhammad Ali in his comments on these verses says, by the people and the jinn here are apparently meant ordinary people and the leaders. So an ordinary person like me is a person, and the jinn could be the leader who has much more power, who can do much greater things, who has much. So Maulana Muhammad Ali says, by the people and the jinn here are apparently meant ordinary people and the leaders, suggesting to each other varnished tales of falsehood. The word jinn is derived from Jannah, meaning covered, concealed or hidden. In the Quran, the class of beings that comes under the term jinn are described as evil spirits or beings that invite man to evil. Jinns are therefore presented as opposites to the angels, who invite to good. Both are, however, invisible to human eye. But there is a wider use of the word jinn in Arabic literature as well as in the Quran. One signification of the word is explained under chapter 72:1, where the word jinn is applied to powerful leaders who, through their importance and detachment from the masses, remain distant or hidden from their eyes. And in this verse, it shows that jinn here means the human leaders of evil, who will propagate evil, who can do much more harm, who have that power. So jinn is being used as those leaders who can exert this negative influence on the world or do harm to the humans. So this point has further been explained in verse 130, whereby calling the jinn and people a single community, the Quran makes it clear that jinn are people and people are not two different classes of beings. It is clear that the jinn and people are not two classes of beings, since the only messengers spoken of in the Quran and other reliable histories of prophets are those who belong to mankind. There's not been mention of any prophets being sent to the jinn. So they're the same prophets. It follows that the jinn spoken of here belong to mankind and not to any other class of creation. So keep that in mind. Am I confusing you now? You're all getting confused, isn't it? But don't worry, it's going to raise questions in your mind, which Shahid Bhai will answer in the end. So get ready.
You're slightly sleepy.
Yeah, so when you start looking at the common concept of jinn and you start Googling things and see what the general Muslim believe about the jinn. So I found some really funny things. You look at the Google and see what people feel, and really probably authentic Islamic websites. So jinn can be Muslims or non-Muslims, some of them things, However, due to their fiery nature, the majority of them are non-Muslims. That's what Muslims believe. All those non-Muslim jinns form a part of the army of the most famous jinn, the Satan. And consequently, these disbelieving jinns are also called devils. Jinns can also become Muslims, as they did in the time of the Holy Prophet, when a group of them were amazed by the recitation of the Holy Quran. This is mentioned in the Quran as the following. And you all know this in the passage, and I'll read it. Say, O Muhammad, it has been revealed to me, God is saying, that a group of jinn listened. So they said, surely we have heard a wonderful Quran, guiding to the right way. So we believe in it, and we shall not set up anyone as partner with our Lord. Quran 72, chapter 72, verse 1 and 2. So the word jinn in the Quranic verses has caused much confusion in the understanding of its real meaning. According to Tajul Arus, Nafara Minal Jinne means a group of 3 to 7 people. Authentic traditions narrates that this incident that has been mentioned in the Holy Quran was that it was a group of 7 Jews from Nasiban, was an area, who had asked the Holy Prophet to meet him at a secret place because they didn't want to come openly. And maybe, upset people, or they weren't sure how the other people will take it back where they came from. So they wanted to meet him secretly at a place in Nakhla, in the outskirts of Makkah. And people who've been to Makkah, there is a Masjid Jinn, which is erected in the same place, as they say, where the jinns met Hazrat Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam.
Outside Medina, 4 miles away from. It's
Wadi Jinn, I know, where the cars go upside down.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
come back and search on Google.
I know.
It's a gravity effect.
It's a gravity effect. It's a physical, geographical phenomena,
That's right.
geological phenomena.
Very nearby you used to Aylesbury
Yeah.
in England.
Uh-huh.
There's a road nearby Aylesbury.
Right.
Same gravity.
Same. Okay. Well, you have to go there one day, isn't it?
That's
You
how
know,
it's
I'll take you on that. Okay. So this was a group of these 7 Jews who came and met there, and they were listened to the verses of the Holy Quran. They went back to their people and informed them of the wonderful teachings of the Holy Quran. It is also mentioned that next morning, the Holy Prophet showed his companions the marks of their halting places and fire pits where they had lit their campfires that night. So it could have been something sort of supernatural, you know. So now I'm going to just read what Dr. Basharat Ahmad Sahib has explained about the Jinn. As he's explaining the chapter Surah Nas in his commentary, he writes about the Jinn. So he says Jinn are hidden beings. Dr. Basharat Ahmad Sahib says Jinns are hidden beings. Any being or thing that is hidden in Arabic is called Jinn. So if you look at the dictionary, in Google, you dictionary it and it comes up as a class of spirits lower than the angels, capable of appearing in human and animal forms and influencing humankind for either good or evil. That's what the dictionary says. And Dr. Basharat Ahmad Sahib says, he describes elites or celebrities are also called jinn, as they are not usually seen among the common people. But now it's changed because everybody's got Twitter. So they can be seen sort of, you know, very much so, just like the Jinn in America is available on Twitter all the time, you know. So the elites or the celebrities, that's Dr. Basharat Ahmad, that's 1900s, early 1900s. So say people who live in jungles and mountains are also called Jinn because they're hidden. Germs and microbes are also called Jinn because they're not visible to naked eye and you need a microscope to see them, and they can be harmful and can be beneficial as well. Similarly, all those inherent forces endowed to humans which instigate animal passions are also termed as jinn, as they're not visible. I could be sitting here and planning something really heinous in my mind and look so innocent. And see, those forces that drive somebody to do these heinous things are also called jinn. It may be pointed out that man combines in himself, he says, a man combines in himself both the animal and angelic passions. Animal passions include love, anger, and other related forces, etc. These motivational forces call all sorts of human activities. On the other hand, your intelligence, conscience, and high morals in a man, they make awareness to differentiate between right and wrong, helps to regulate his activities. So on one hand, you got all these emotions, and they're instigating you to do things, and then you've got your morals, your conscience, your intelligence telling you to control yourself and behave in a certain manner as Allah has asked you to do so. And they regulate his activities and make him conscious of the accountability of his actions in this life and the hereafter. Consider animal passions as the engine. So he gives an example of an engine. I'm sure motor car was very new on the horizon in those days. So it's the things of an engine. For the invisible powers within man that propel the human engine, these passions are these invisible powers who propel this engine forward. And these invisible powers in the terminology of the Quran are called jinn. When the Quran says that jinn is created from fire, it means to say that it creates energy which makes or moves the engine and starts working. So conscience, moral values, intelligence are like the brakes that keep the engine on the right track and regulate its speed so that it does not cause an accident. These brakes, he says, in the terminology of the Quran, are called angels. However, when the motivational forces cross their limit and ignore the control and the instructions, in the Quranic terminology, these very powers, metaphorically called jinn, become Satan. So jinn, when it works in the right direction, is an angel. And when it goes off the track and leads man to evil and destruction, becomes the Satan. The word shaitan stems from shait, meaning destruction, and shatan, meaning distance. Thus, the jinn, which instigates human emotions, is called Satan when it fails to control it and allows it to destroy itself and guides it away from its right course. So you leave the course, you're not on the straight and narrow, and then you're leading yourself to destruction. On the other hand, if the jinn or the invisible forces or motivational energy are kept under control by your intelligence, conscience, and high virtues, then it will submissively follow the right way. And as such behave like a Muslim. That is why it is mentioned in the hadith that the Holy Prophet ﷺ said that my jinn has become a Muslim. So if you look at the concept of jinn, as people say, so these unusual or mysterious things are usually ascribed to magic or the jinns. That's what people say, you know. If you go back to the time of Prophet Solomon, he used to perform some extraordinary activities. And it is said that he had jinn. He had jinn to help him, right? Isn't that said, you know, by Hazrat Sulaiman, you know, that he had possession of the jinn? And things like understanding the language of the birds, causing unprecedented speed of his merchandise, flowing of molten brass, designing of the huge synagogues, manufacturing bowls as large as water troughs, and huge cooking pots, etc. All those things. These feats in the days of Solomon must be considered magical in those days. But not at the moment. They're not magical now, if you look at these things. Therefore, even at the time of the Holy Prophet ﷺ, because of his superhuman qualities, extraordinary intelligence, impressive talk, and unusual bravery, people used to call him like a magician, you know, because you will be under his spell if you go and see the Prophet. And even today, I'm sorry to say, a lot of the Muslims, general Muslims, give him that superhuman category, because they say that he could see 360 degrees, he could see as clearly as front and as you could see at the back. When he walked, he did not have any impression on the ground, he did not have a shadow, you know. So they start ascribing the superhuman qualities to so these things are out there, you know, although we don't believe in those things, because it takes away all his struggle and hard work as a human being that he carried out, bringing that reformation in the society and bring about that change. It takes it all away if you start making them supernatural and you shroud them in mystery. So even nowadays, you know, you see somebody who's working really hard and he's very committed and he's so enthusiastic and he's focused, and you say, well, this guy looks possessed to me. What has possessed you, man? You know, isn't it? So it's like he's possessed by something. So these terminologies are used because he's very focused, he's energetic, he's doing things. So you say, this guy seems possessed to me, you know, hopefully for good. So human brain not only works in mysterious ways, but sometimes due to some disease or shock, it does behave in odd ways, you know. Now, I'm not going to go into detail, but you look at scientific advancement in the field of medicine, surgery, psychology, have found so many cures and explanations for illnesses that were previously ascribed to jinn. But there are still many which need cure and looking into. I'm going to read a few hadiths that I picked up from Google. I haven't looked it up so I don't know whether it's the right, but I think they're true hadiths. There's one in Tirmizi explaining about the jinn. When Prophet was telling them something, they mistook for something like supernatural beings. So Prophet said in Tirmizi, and it's a Sahih hadith, the Prophet ﷺ said, "Do not clean yourselves with dung or bones, for they are the food for your brothers among the jinn." So people start thinking maybe jinn eat bones and we know to keep away from them. But actually I think what he was describing, and it's a common practice in Arab and other places where you don't have toilet tissues, when you go and do a call of nature, you use a stone or some dry clay or something to for cleaning yourself. And the Prophet is trying to tell them, please don't use the bones or dung or things like that, because he knew it's bacteria and the germs in it, and it can make you ill. It's harmful for you. It's something hidden, and people then started thinking maybe the jinn were here where the bones are, they leave bones out for jinn to eat, and start looking after these supernatural beings. There's another hadith, Hazrat Abu Huraira reported, the Apostle of Allah said, when any of you awakes from sleep and performs ablution in the morning, he must clean his nose 3 times, for the devil spends the night in the interior of his nose. Muslim volume 1 number 462. So the question here is, we know that there are a lot of bacteria in the nose. It's the most harmful bacteria, and part of wuzu we clean it 5 times a day. He's telling you to clean your nose, so you get rid of the bugs, the bacteria that can harm your body. So it's not like jinn is sitting in there in your nose overnight, so you need to get rid of the jinn by physically expelling them. So the relevant point is, I'm going to talk about a little scientific fact. I haven't got much detail. The fact is that all life started with unicellular organism, bacteria. So before the humans ever were created by Allah, this universe was created, there was bacteria. They're called very ancient bacteria. And the science proves that the most ancient bacteria drew their energy directly from heat. Right? Directly from heat. That's how they survived. And this is why Allah Mia says that I created it from smokeless fire, and they were created before man. So all these bacteria they draw their energy directly from heat, and this is exactly in line with the Quranic declaration made over 1400 years ago. According to the accepted scientific studies, direct heat from fire had to play a vital role in the creation and maintenance of the prebiotic organisms. This, in fact, was the only mode of transfer of energy for the consumption of organized forms of existence during this era, at the start of the universe. As they multiplied and multiplied during their uninterrupted proliferation, lasting over billions of years, their death must have polluted the oceans, while they decayed and fermented, turning the oceans into the primordial soup. Now we all know, we talk about the origins of life from the primordial soup, and so this is what Quran is pointing towards, that maybe Quran is talking about bacteria and that started the whole process of the human life. So human mind has created marvels. I just want to tell you an example before I finish. We see people are very educated living in the Western world, and they must be very clever. I actually had a patient. His daughter had some mental health issues. So he came to see me once. I knew him a few times, so he said, I really need a favor from you. I said, what's the favor? He said, can you get me an IV infusion drip? I said, well, usually they're in hospitals. I'm a GP. I can try to get you one. Why do you need it though? He said, there is some Maulana Saab or Peer Saab, and he's promised that if he says and prays over that drip, then we can put it on for his daughter, so the drip can go through his veins, all her body, and it'll get rid of the evil spirit within her body. And this is a very educated person living in a very nice house. You see them.
Well, it's better than beating the people.
It's better than beating. I know. Yeah. You can beat the jinn out. You can do all and set people on fire sometimes.
Yeah.
Hit them, and that. So that is the situation in the real world. We are fortunate. We are part of the Jamaat that doesn't believe in these kind of absurd beliefs. And that's why, we are fortunate. So this is why these beliefs are out there. Believe you me, you go to Pakistan, and people from Pakistan will tell you in the villages and even in cities, it is so rampant. This piri, fakiri, and jinn, and whatever, And yes, people have difficulties in life. We all have difficulties in life. We have weak moments in life. We have financial difficulties. We have marital difficulties. We have all kind of difficulties. And those weak moments, these people will grab you, and then they'll start proving from the Holy Quran that yes, jinn happen. Prophet says jinn is there. Prophet said that they will do this and they use religion as a cladding to use and you know, for their own further gains, and they really sort of, you know, exploit these people mentally, physically, financially, and whatnot. So I'll be finishing my talk now. So human mind has created marvels in present time. This shows in how many dimensions human mind can manifest its tremendous power. The modern man does not need an Aladdin's lamp to help him in doing the feats. Allah has created human being to use his faculties for the good of human beings. This is the meaning of the word ya'budun in the verse, and I have not created the jinn and the people except that they should serve me. God's way to rule the world is by being beneficent and merciful. And if human being become obsessive like a genie, otherwise he will be thrown out. That is why it's all right, sir. I think it's all fun. It'll be Maghrib, isn't it? So I'll end now. I'll end my talk. That is why the Holy Quran has warned the human being to remain within the limits of a servant and should not try to be a master. Allah Mia says, O assembly of jinn and men. Allah is addressing both these powerful people and normal people like me. O assembly of jinn and men, if you are able to pass through the regions of the heavens and the earth, it's not just the heavens, the earth as well, then pass through. You cannot pass through but with authority. Chapter 55:33. Authority lies with the Almighty Allah and nobody else. With that, I'll end my talk. Thank you very much.
Jawad, thank you very much for that wonderful speech. Do you want to see a jinn? I can show you a jinn now.
It's not that bad looking.
My wife says, when you become upset, you become like a jinn. So
You're not alone.
But as Jawad says, you know, it depends on what you want to do. Do you want to take the meaning of jinn from Hollywood movies? Some, you know, mighty being flying around, or what the Holy Quran says. And as you say, it is beings, things, forces that we cannot see. I mean, if you put your hand on top of that radiator, you'll feel heat, but you can't see it. So that's one example. As I said, Yahya is not here, but he sent a speech that he wrote, which is going to be read out by Zach or Zachariah.